Hello everyone and welcome to pilot episode of Posture and Performance Podcast. My name is Alexa and I'm gonna be your host. In this episode we'll talk about longevity. We'll start with oxygen as the most important molecule in the nature and importance of its flow for overall functioning of our body. Not only the oxygen but carbon dioxide will also be the topic. It's everywhere and we have to take it into consideration. We'll see how increasing the levels of CO2 in our body can actually boost our focus. VO₂ Max is often described as a performance metric, something that is reserved for professional athletes or endurance competitors. You'll see how at the fundamental level VO₂ Max is important for the functioning of our body and that it's actually the metric of how biologically young we are. At its core, VO₂ Max represents the maximal amount of oxygen that your body can process during the high effort activities. But it's not about breathing harder, it's about integrating all the systems of your body and them functioning together to provide you the oxygen. Finally, we'll go over an always hot topic, the fat loss. We'll see how data can actually help us save our time and preserve an energy when we hit the target with the training. How can we actually boost our fat burning efficiency? Ladies and gentlemen, my host today is someone who will be often able to see in my place as a host of this program, Mr. Vladimir Vojovic, head coach and co-founder of Posture and Performance, my dear colleague, partner in crime, and someone who I'm learning from on a daily basis. Is it stupid welcoming you to your own podcast?
I don't know if this is a welcome. Thank you for having me.
Let's go to serious topics, please. VO₂ Max, a trending topic nowadays. Yet many people fail to understand why is it so important, and can you please explain us what on physiological basis does it mean for our performance and our health?
As you mentioned in one moment, VO₂ Max is the maximal amount of oxygen that we can observe on some high intensities. We test VO₂ Max with advanced technology and it gives us insights in someone's biological age. Now that's a big statement to make, so let's analyze it. Our VO₂ Max depends upon three most important systems: our heart system, lungs, and cells' ability to produce energy. That is the reason why VO₂ Max is the most accurate longevity metric.
If I understood well, if we have high values of VO₂ Max, we can assume that these three systems in our body are functioning well and that we are actually biologically young.
Exactly. High levels of VO₂ Max indicate that those three systems are functioning well. But on another hand, if we have low values of VO₂ Max, we can expect that some of the systems, is that heart, lungs, all cells, are not functioning on the optimal level that we want for our health. And when we see that happening, we analyze all of those systems separately and then we train them with some well-studied protocols.
You explained what VO₂ Max is and its connection to biological age. Can you please expand on potential causes of low VO₂ Max?
So the things that make high VO₂ Max obviously can have also the negative impact on VO₂ Max. When I say negative, I mean if we have low heart performance, it will negatively influence VO₂ Max. Low heart performance, I mean the strength of the heart muscle. Second thing can be limited lung capacity. And the third thing can be that our cells, our mitochondria cells, are not making enough of energy. Now, what that means for us? That means for us that we are functioning with lower amounts of oxygen. That means that we are functioning with less fuel. And the life doesn't stop there. We still need to fight our everyday battles, even with low amounts of energy. Over time, that can lead to chronic fatigue. Now, when we see that present in our tests, we try to change that step by step, slowly. We don't use aggressive methods because training by itself, it's a stress. And if we put too much stress on somebody who is already fatigued, that's just one quick way to injury.
We've learned that VO₂ Max is subject to change. What needs to be done to improve our VO₂ Max? What is the time frame for someone who is committed? And please give us some example on that.
Okay, the best starting point is to have accurate data. Because when we have data, when we know how someone's engine is working, we can easily train it. The time frame we usually see significant improvements are 3 months. And there is one encouraging case. It was a male gentleman, 52 years old. When we did the test, his biological age showed that he was in his 60s. Then when he went through the training process, after 3 months, when we repeated this test, his biological age was 47, if I'm not mistaken. So that is 13 years of biological age reduction in 3 months. Now, why is that possible and how is that possible? It's because when we are trying to help someone, the whole team is behind his or her process. When I say whole team, metabolic expert is involved, a nutritionist is involved, movement coach is involved, and strength coach is involved. We don't believe that we are the smartest people on the planet and that we can be coaches, nutritionists, and mental guiders. So because of that, we need a team, and the whole team is engaged. That's also one of the reasons where I believe that we are only fitness company that is giving fully money back guarantee if we don't reverse your biological age in 1 year. That is how much we trust this system and how much we develop the system.
We all know that oxygen is important. There is no life without it. But what about CO2? It's present in our body. Why is it so important, and what happens when we lack carbon dioxide?
So for healthy hormones, sustainable body weight, and good performance, we need to have good usage of oxygen. So not just high amounts of oxygen present in our body, but ability to use the oxygen. Carbon dioxide plays huge role there because carbon dioxide is releasing oxygen and allowing oxygen to go in our tissue. Let's explain. Imagine that carbon dioxide is one key that unlocks hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is red blood cell. From there, oxygen goes out in our tissue and we use it. So if we have chronically low amounts of carbon dioxide because maybe we are shallow chest breather, that can impact our energy during a day and it can delay our training results. So when we notice that, we want to change the way how we breathe. Not just the amount of air that we can inhale, but the way how we breathe, because it can have significant impact on training results and energy sustainability during the day.
You have mentioned that when CO2 levels are low, the oxygen cannot reach out to our muscles. What about other tissues? We know that the brain heavily depends on presence of oxygen. Can we maybe relate low levels of carbon dioxide to brain fog, tiredness, or some other disorders that we feel on a daily basis?
Unfortunately, we can. 10% of population has hyperventilation. That is impacting the function of our metabolism. Now, what is hyperventilation? Hyperventilation is when we are in the rested state and we breathe excessively and fast. Now, that is causing following problems to happen. Hyperventilation decreases the amount of carbon dioxide that we have in our system. When we have low levels of carbon dioxide, our blood vessels becomes a little bit smaller, especially the blood vessels in the brain. Now, what is that causing as a side effect? Our brain gets less food, less oxygen. And then we can experience brain fog, tiredness, and usually stiffness around the spine. When we test someone, which two metrics are we following to see if somebody is having hyperventilation? One metric is breathing frequency. How many breathing cycles somebody has in the resting state? It should be up to 15. And the second metric that we follow is levels of carbon dioxide.
You talked about fast and excessive breathing as something that has negative impact on our focus because it limits the supply of oxygen and the nutrients to our brain. What can we do about it? What to do to provide enough amount of oxygen to our brain when we are in the hyperventilation state?
We do that by increasing carbon dioxide levels in our system. More carbon dioxide means that our blood vessels dilate, they become bigger. For brain, that means more energy. And we can easily test this because our mobility highly depends upon oxygen levels in our brain. For example, do a toe touch test. You try to touch your toes or go as much as you can. See the tightness level and the amount of range of motion that you have. Then do the following exercise. Exhale all of the air out and then block the breathing pathways. Do from 6 to 8 squats and then inhale through the nose. 1, second bigger, third inhale should be normal. In that moment, repeat the test, try to touch the toes and see if change is present. If the change is positive, then you benefited from more oxygen in your brain.
So to repeat, breathe out, 6 to 8 squats without breathing, and then just 2 controlled breaths in through your nose, and then the third one is normal, and just retest after that.
Exactly. The mistake is if you, for example, do 8 squats and you need to breathe excessively for 4 or 5 times, that is again hyperventilation. We don't want to allow that. So we need to stabilize ourselves under 2 breathing cycles. Third needs to be normal.
Not only the brain needs an energy, the rest of the body craves it too. Which energy supplies do we have, and how does training intensity reflect on energy usage?
A big part of metabolism is to produce energy. Now, we have 2 types of energy sources, fats and sugars. When we are in the rested state, we want dominantly to burn fat for our energy production. And there are 2 reasons behind it. First reason is, if we burn fat to produce energy, we will store less fat around our bellies. Second reason is, comparing to sugars, we get 10 times more energy burning fat comparing to sugars. And then it's making much better energy efficiency. Comparing to high intensity performance, when we are on some high intensity, then we dominantly want to burn sugars. The mistake is burning sugars in the resting state, because then our body has a feeling like we are running when we are actually not. We are in the seated position, in some resting position.
So when resting, by default, we should dominantly burn the fat for the sake of economy. It obviously doesn't happen with all of the people. Why do some of the people still use carbohydrates if fats are 10 times more economical for our body?
The answer is simple. A lot of us don't do enough of cardio training. Cardio training or zone 2 training is a steady state training when we do something for at least 30 minutes or more. And when we do that type of training, we develop our mitochondria. Mitochondria are the cells that are most responsible for making energy from fat. Even when we finish our session and after the session, it teaches our body how to make energy from fat.
For those who skipped biology lessons, what is mitochondria and why is it so important?
Poor mitochondria, unfortunately, equals poor metabolism. Why? Mitochondria are small cells that are making energy for our brain, muscles, and the rest of the body. They do that with the help of oxygen and fat. So if we have well-developed mitochondria, we can expect sustainable energy during a day and less fat accumulation. Why? Because we are using that fat. If the situation is different and our mitochondria are not making enough energy from fat, our body will switch and will make more energy from sugars in the resting state. Now, that is not efficient strategy. Why? Because then we can expect to have energy crashes during the day and to slowly gain weight. That is why testing mitochondria is important to seal their state, and if we need to improve them, to do so.
You have mentioned that zone 2 training is the most important contributor in the fat loss journey. Let's make it practical. What is zone 2? How do you determine it, and how do you use it when you work with your clients?
Zone 2 is cardio training. When we speak about training zones, we have some 5 training zones. Zone 1 is the easiest with the lowest heart rate. Zone 5 is the hardest with the highest heart rate. When we analyze someone's metabolism, we get insights into their individual training zones, so we can adapt our training to their specific health needs.
Let me interrupt you for the moment, please. We know that zone 2 is right below the aerobic threshold, which means that we are dominantly using the oxygen to produce an energy when in zone 2. How do we exactly know if we are in zone 2? Sometimes zone 3 can feel exactly the same as zone 2. How do you know whether your training is zone 2 or zone 3?
That's the thing. You don't feel, you don't guess, you measure it and you use the data. When we put a mask on someone's face during a test, we can see exactly heart rate that represents their training zone 2.
Very clear, thank you. Let's get back to fat loss. The golden question. What do you do when you want your client to lose the weight?
One of the ways is to spend time in training zone 2, as we mentioned, and then the question is how long. It should be approximately 2 hours per week. Now, I usually don't train training zone 2 hours in one session, and I usually don't give it to anybody. It can be splitted. It can be splitted, for example, in 4 sessions that last 30 minutes in training zone 2. And it needs to be at least 30 minutes, because after 30 minutes our body has one mechanics to switch our energy supply dominantly from fat, and we want to achieve that. So the recommendation is to spend at least 30 minutes in training zone 2, ideally should be 45, and the goal is to accumulate 2 hours on a weekly basis.
Okay, for most of the people, zone 2 will actually be walking. Will you stay next to someone on the treadmill while they walk, or you'll recommend doing that after the session, after the strength session or something?
Yeah, it can be after the strength session because it's time effective. You can do your strength session and then do 30 minutes or 45 minutes in the zone 2. The zone 2 doesn't need to be extremely boring. You can combine the equipment. You can be 4 minutes on treadmill, 4 minutes on bike, 4 minutes boxing bag, and make it more interesting because time will pass faster.
Amazing. Well, Vladimir, thank you for being the guest on your own podcast. Hopefully we're gonna swap the places for the next one. I really enjoyed this conversation and looking forward for the next episode.
Thank you for being host on my podcast.
You're welcome.